until we hired Mike Edelman, and he took over the commercial part, the sales part, and I ran the technical part. And Clark, on the corner, was my office. And this is where I did my conjuring. Anyway, it's been great to meet you people again and seeing you again. And the only thing I want to say is that I would like to mention that Gregory Halper, whom I met when I hired with Polychrome, he was a man that I loved from the standpoint of being fair. He was always fair. You could always go to him and complain. Whether it did any good, that's another story. But I traveled with him extensively to Europe, to Australia, and to other parts of the world. And he would always recognize people who were, first of all, they were straight, honest, and didn't give him any guff. When he stayed in Yonkers, I got transferred to Clark, and that's where I finished my work. I turned 62, and I said, I'm walking out. And everybody said, wait a minute, you can't do that. Because there's only one company that didn't offer me a job. I walked out, and then I got involved in other hobbies. That money came very handy. But anyway, this is the short story how I spent my time at 26 and a half or 27 years with Polychrome. Okay? They promoted me. Bernie Gold one time says, whatever the hell you do it. Don't bother me with details. Because we started to make money on film. So at that time, I think the older employee than me is Simon Chu.
And I'm doing their environmental management, sustainability, but I still can't get away from Polychrome because the image drum in our machines are all OPC, and you know Jay Patel worked on OPC, we had an OPC laser plate, so Polychrome is still with me. I still hear from a lot of people that I used to work with. It was really an experience that I'll never forget, and knowing most of the people here, it's like a family, so I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm Rosemary Baker. I've been Chrome. I've been using Chrome for the last 20 years. I started with Polychrome in 1986. That was my first job out of college in the IT department, and I worked on the warehouse and distribution systems. So Polychrome. After that, I went to Chemical, and I went to New Jersey, and then I started to get religion. The commute was killing me. So I looked for another position on Long Island to shorten my commute. But Polychrome always had a place in my heart because that's where I met my life partner, Mario Rufino, during my tenure at Polychrome.
I started at Polychrome in 1977 as a key punch operator, and Tom had interviewed me for a programming position then. And I remember after 4 hours of interviewing with him, he said, I'll let you know if you have a programming position. And I remember saying, in my first official interview, and I remember saying, my 4 hours of no, it didn't do it. And then that was my first official interview. I worked here at Polychrome until 1992. But I gotta say, when I first did start working in the programming department, I was one of the first females. And when Stu Sherman was brought on at Tom, he hired some other females, and I said, oh, thank God. And at any rate, he said I had to do it. So, but Polychrome gave me a really great start in business. It was around me that I never had in any other company. As far as getting to know systems and working my way up from programmer to analyst. Thank you, guys.
I'm in ken-ichi 1. I started Polychrome in July 1976. I was hired to develop electronic printing. When I started, I don't even know anodizing at all. Only learned something in principle in school. But practically, I learned a lot. And I retired in 2010. I worked for 35 years. I'm free now. Thank you.
My name is Jeevan Gandhi. I just joined 1 month ago, June 76. He came in July. I joined as an electrical engineer, handling the electrical engineering department for manufacturing facility. I have seen a lot of changes through the years and seen at Polychrome, because the equipment that I came and I saw, you couldn't even buy it today. Variable speed, for example, we were hand cranking with the motors just to get a different speed, whereas now it's all electronic. I was with Yonkers until Yonkers closed down, got laid off, and then I was lucky enough after a year or two to be hired in the research department in Caltech. Then after on year 2000, I got laid off from there again. And I worked for a consulting company for 10 years, and later on after that, a water purification plant, which is the largest in the world, is around college here. I worked on that. Thank you.
Sid Valves, I started with Polychrome in 1960, and through 2000, for a few years. I ran a training department in Yonkers and moved to Falstaff, the corporate R&D group. I was there pretty much to the end of 2000. Since then, I've been doing a lot of traveling. My son and daughter settled down in Yorktown. I have 4 grandchildren, 2 3-year-old girls and 2 5-year-old boys. And they're 10 minutes away, so it's quite busy. And on top of that, I've been working the past 10 years for the work at the county department of human resources, recruitment, selection, examination. So it's been fun, and it's great to see everybody.
My name is Ken, and I was hired, like I always say, by Mayweather in October 25th, 1965. I didn't have any interview. I just wrote a letter to the company and note saying, how much do you want? So that's how I came, and since then there's no more middle order employees. I guess it's not a big success. But I enjoyed my bench R&D work. Eventually it became like a technology cheerleader. But I think I still like the bench work. I'm fully retired, and we warming up our friendship with the old Polychrome family. I think we were a big family, and sad to see some of them are going, and now the time to at least get together, and we're happy to see you today. If I may consider you all my family, but you are. Thank you.
Well, I'm Simon Chu. I came this year to sort of say again that I'm the oldest and the longest. However, I just realized I've been superseded by Victor as the oldest. I didn't realize that Victor was 82. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
That's very, very good. Because you don't look any different. But anyway, you all, are part of our history, our memories, and our happiness. So it's been a long, wonderful journey. Let's keep it going.
Hi, I'm Bill Palafox. I'm really delighted to see so many familiar faces, believe it or not. So I still recognize a lot of you. I started with Polychrome in 1980. I came on board for a special project, and that was a high-speed imaging system called UMF, which was basically step and repeat by microfilm. And of course, that led me into other ventures in the company. It was primarily high-speed plates. Jim Sheldon, you remember things like that. Jim Shee and the rest of the gang, I remember bugging you all for faster plates, whether it was conventional or OPC and those things like that. Mario Rufino remembers me from
Quality.
make those plates nice and flat and things like that. So I had a great time doing that type of work a lot with R&D folks and then the marketing folks. And then I left Polychrome in 1993. And actually I came back to Polychrome 3 years later and ran the Kansas City operation that flipped over from OptiCopy. And then as times change, of course, for all of us, I went into the internet world. And for the last 12 years of my working life, that's where I went. And finally learned how to make a buck in the internet world, which was a challenge to begin with. I retired 2 years ago, and our life is exciting. My wife and I have a lot of common interests. We're into sailboat racing 3 times a week. We play a lot of golf. We go hiking. We just really have a ball. So we have a good life. With all that, I was able to, and thanks to Polychrome, put in 26 years with the Air Force Reserve. So I have a great retirement out of that. So we're happy campers, and it's really good to see everybody here.
Maybe I'll move over a little bit. I'm Vivian D'Elia, and it's wonderful to see the familiar faces from years ago. I've been, I guess it was 84 I started with Polychrome, and I left in 90, I think it was 93, not positive. And for the last almost 20 years, I'm working at Movado Group. So I went from plate and film to watches and jewelry. A little bit different. I have some great memories. This is my first time back here to see the group. Jeff Jacobson kind of convinced me to come, and there are other people that I also, I don't know if you remember Jan Parker, because I still see her, and unfortunately she couldn't make it. Some other people I hear or meet or hear through third parties about where they are and what they're doing. So I'm just really excited to see everybody. It is a lot of familiar faces. It's funny to see so many retired, you know. I was kind of the younger one back then, and now in my company I'm one of the older ones and, you know, soon to retire in the next few years. So thanks for having me here, and I can't wait to get around and catch up with everyone. Thanks.
Hello there, I'm Diane Grandolfo, and thanks to my good friend Mario over there and Ken Shimizu that connected with me. This is actually my first reunion. I actually owe it to Ken to give me my first job out of undergraduate school as a librarian, I guess in the R&D library in 1976, and I somehow squeezed my way into the R&D lab as a junior chemist at some point. And I actually loved it when we used to go and do pilot plant runs over in the manufacturing facility, so I kind of fell in love with manufacturing. And I left there in Polychrome in 1979. Gosh, that was a long time ago. And as Mario said, Polychrome was a great place to work. We not only worked hard, but we played hard. We did lots of sports activities together. We skied, we played bridge at lunchtime. It was like a great atmosphere. And I worked in Gene Golder's lab, and I worked with Paul Giorgello. I mean, it's such a long time ago. And actually, when I left there, I transitioned into the food industry, and I've been actually in food manufacturing, and still am. I've worked for Nestle, Nabisco, Coke, and I'm with Dunkin' Brands now. So I run plants, we've shut down plants, we've started up plants. had a great career in food manufacturing and really enjoy that. And I'm actually working with Dunkin' right now, overseeing 19 facilities in the tri-state area. And interestingly enough, I live in the next town over, so when Ken told me about the luncheon, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's like right in my backyard. So great to see everybody. I always love coming to reunions. Thanks, Ken, for organizing it. It's always a lot of hard work to pull a group together, but thank you.
Rich Cohen, you know, it's funny how life works out. I graduated from college in '78, and my Aunt Lillian, who some of you might know, worked in payroll. I'm sure she signed some of your checks. So what are you going to do with life? And I felt like Benjamin, you know, from the movie, well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, she said, what are you going to do with life? I said, I don't know. She goes, I can get you an interview with the company I work for, but the rest is up to you. So I went to the interview. Everybody remembers the big hair, and worked for this man right here. I couldn't have asked for a better boss, Jim Sheldon. We did work hard. We worked on a lot of projects, whether it was PPN, whether it was Chrome Guide, positive plates. I mean, we just had it all. And, you know, I was hired as a test tube washer. I mean, boy, could I clean test tubes? But I tell you, my zest for learning and knowledge, I worked my way through and got out into the field, worked with Ray Bender, worked with Bill Palafax, went over to Germany. I got to travel, and that's all because of Polychrome and my training. I then went into sales. I marked myself into Ron Muzilla's office. I wanted more from Polychrome, and I got into sales, and I worked in field sales up until 1992. Parted ways then, but then I worked with Polychrome again, side by side, as I worked for a dealer up in Syracuse, New York, selling Polychrome product. I just couldn't get away. And I'm still working nowadays. I'm still in graphic arts. I still sell supplies. I manage a warehouse up in Syracuse, and everything is because of Polychrome. And it's great to see a lot of the faces here, a lot of people, and let's keep it going.
Worked at Polychrome from '78 to '87 in R&D, and people are right. Polychrome was a great place to work. I really enjoyed it. In fact, it was my first job out of college, and I really kind of grew up in the Polychrome umbrella, and it served me well throughout the rest of my career. I have a lot of stories to tell, but I can't tell them in public. So, if you want to talk about some, we'll talk at the bar later on. But there is one story I will talk about, and that is the day I interviewed. That's really safe. I remember walking into Mr. Governor's office. Mr. Governor said to me, he said, well, if you needed 3-methyl-indole, how would you get it? And I just out of graduate school, this is the kind of question I'd ask. I said, well, I take benzene, I'd run a real cross reaction with that, and elastic, then I'd run it with shock and burning conditions, I'd take methylamine. He said, no. And I thought, yeah, that was a great way to do it. How would you do it? He said, I'd go to the Aldrich Academy. I said, oh, it's going to be one of those interviews. Okay, so then I caught on. And the reason I got my job was because of Peggy Otis. Peggy Otis, the reason I got that job. I was interviewing with Al Deutsch, so lovely guy. And I guess it came down to myself and another guy who couldn't decide. He was pulling his hair up, what he had. I'm trying to figure out who we wanted to get. And so he asked Peggy, he said, what am I going to do? What am I going to pick? He said, well, you know that tall guy that came in? He thanked me when I gave him a cup of coffee. And she said, I would hire him because of what he did right then. And that's how Al said, he's the guy. And that's how I came on board. So, anyway, as I left Polychrome, I went on to work in Southern California, into photoresist, electronics industry. Now I'm not retired. I actually formed a company, partnership to write patents. I'm a patent agent now, and so I write patents for all kinds of high-tech companies now. So my fingers are still in the tech world. That's really a lot of fun. It was great to see everybody. I'm better with not great with names, but I'm better with faces, and I recognize almost every one of them. So anyway, thank you for inviting me. And
I'm Ray Bear, and I started at Polychrome in January 4th, 1982. Basically first job out of college. And I worked for Ralph Field, who I saw a picture, was not able to come here. I remember Bob so he was Bob Oakley, I was his boss. And obviously I recognize a lot of people from a variety of times, from the early 80s through the 90s. Anyway, I worked for Polychrome for 10 years. For 12 years. We worked in Yonkers for 10 years, but then we moved over to Fort Lee. After 2 years of Polychrome in Fort Lee, I became an employee at Sun Chemical, and I'm still employed with them. So basically, I have 31 and a half years of service now. So there's still a few, I believe, Polychrome people at Sun Chemical, not too many. But just, I met so many people from the sporting activities you should do, the basketball team, the softball. I remember all those games, Super Saturday, was it, or whatever we used to do. It was just a lot of fun, and we had a lot of activities. And while Sun Chemicals is a good company, it wasn't like this. Polychrome definitely had more of a family aspect, and and that's probably why I'm here today. So, thank you.
I'm John Barron. I joined Polychrome in 1987. I went to work in the IT area. I worked in Stu Sherman's organization. I worked with Rosemary, Sylvia, and several people around this table that I partnered with. We built some great systems at Polychrome. I'm very proud of that. When I came, it actually was kind of a lucky break because I left Wall Street, and a couple months later, the stock market crashed. So I thought I had a safe home. And so I'll always appreciate Polychrome for that. I've since gone back to Wall Street, but I just want to say there's many things I could say, but what I always loved about Polychrome was we built something. We built the product. We built something you could physically see, and that's something you don't these days get to do all that often anymore. Number two was we were a very big small company. I always felt. We had the operations in Germany. I was there when we built the plant in Georgia. So we did a lot of things in the world. It seemed like a small company, but it was a really big company. And then, of course, last of all, was the spirit of family. Thank you.
I worked for Polychrome from 1974 to 1987. I was corporate controller most of that time. I just retired yesterday. I'm full-time. We do some consulting with the company I work with. I'll just repeat a couple of things that people have said. This was the best company to ever work for. And I've worked for a lot of companies afterwards, and this was the best place to work. It was the best bunch of people. It was the best family of people that people have said, and I totally enjoyed it. And I am in contact with Ralph Field, Joe Saccone, Ralph Maggio, and it's the memories were just great. That I had with working with a lot of you people here and just working with the whole company. And let's see, I have 4 grandchildren and I hope to enjoy them.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephen Rogers. I worked at Polychrome from 1989, yes, to 1992, a short while there. I worked for Ralph Field, and then they moved me over into the factory, and I worked for Mashia. I mean, when I first started coming in, I remember my first interview, I sat with Ralph Field, and then I went to Ralph Mashia, and it was the strangest thing. Ralph goes to me at the end, "Can I ask you one question? You play any basketball?" Of course, it just threw me off guard, but the beautiful thing about Polychrome was it was a great family attitude, an atmosphere. I guess a lot of us used to go to the Red Robin on Friday nights and have a few drinks and play Papa Shot. I played with the basketball team. I was really looking forward to see Pete Morales, who didn't show up. But I see a lot of faces, and it's just good to be here. Right now, I'm currently working for a nonprofit in New York. In Manhattan, we deal with hospital stuff and grant making. And my part-time hobby is traveling and taking pictures. but as I see, the faces here that I see, it's just good to see people that you haven't seen in years. Years, and I'm just happy to be here.
In 1960, I was 30 years old. I had worked mostly in the factories. Mr. Niemeyer, I don't know if anybody here remembers Mr. Niemeyer, he hired me. And he said, well, let's go in and see how your typing is. Well, my job, what it was typing on the graph type. So you couldn't go fast. That's what we used to send out different things to people on metal. And we used to send out a lot of advertisements to possible lithographics. We would also give away fishing lures, those big rulers with the center ruler. We got a lot of answers, but we didn't get a lot of work. They wanted the free stuff. So then Mr. Niemeyer left and Mr. Randolph took over. He died a few years ago. Under Mr. Niemeyer, we had to go to the salesman. Had to go and pull out, tear out pages from the phone book that had lithographers in it. That's how we built up our mailing list. I worked there for 35 years. Sometimes I don't know the names, but I know everybody here because when I went into the mail room. Mr. Almuni. Somebody said something about Mr. Almuni. Mr. and Mrs. Almuni were very nice people. We used to have big Christmas parties, and there was a nice big Christmas party at the factory for people who worked and also for the people upstairs. He knew everybody's name, how many children you had. He walked through the plant. You don't get that today. Your boss doesn't care who the heck you are. Just get your work done and don't ask for anything. So I retired when I was 65, and now 83. I'm still working and have another one next year. Please.
Okay, my name is Paul Swallen, and I started with Polychrome in 1981. The thing that I remember most in all the years that I worked for Polychrome was the infamous football game. And I'm going to just tell you what happened. It's pretty amazing. The first person who you would think was involved in this is a guy named Harlitz. Rich Harlitz. He came to Polychrome to run the customer service group and the manufacturing group, and he hired a guy named Steve Gittemall. Everybody remembers. Steve was one of the most competitive people you ever want to meet. And he had a thing with Marv Lieberman down in Clark, where they didn't like each other. They were always competing in any possible way they could. So one day they decided they wanted to have a football game between the Yonkers plant and the Clark plant. And it was going to be a flag football game, and just for fun and blah blah blah. Turns out that the flags were really, really hard to get off when you went to grab them, and it turned into a tackle football game. One guy ended up in the hospital. There were at least 2 broken bones, and it was just amazing. And so after that, anything that happened was not too bad. I continued on and on and on. I retired last year from Kodak. I stayed with the company all that time, and retired last year.
Hi, my name is Ralph Mashio. I was started with Polychrome in 1984. Bob Oaken hired me. I was the plant controller in Yonkers. Later on, I went to work for Mr. Mazzillo in the sales department as his controller. I had some great times. Great times. So it was a wonderful place to be. I actually kept a lot of acquaintances over the years. These 2 ladies on my left, I'm very familiar with, Maria and Pauline. Mr. Rogers over there. Bob is always there, pick up a phone, call me, always answers. It's been Mario, of course. It's just, and a few other people. So it's really, I was there a good 8 years. It was probably the best year of my career. Well, every year was good, but it was sort of some of the special years. So thank you for organizing it, and hope to see you all again soon. Great there and all kinds of stuff.
I started with Polychrome on July 1st, 1985. And I stayed with the company through Sun Chemical, going over to Fort Lee, and then over to KPG in Norwalk, Connecticut. And I'm still with Kodak. JD and I are still, I think the two remaining individuals are still with Kodak. I'm still doing purchasing. I'm still involved with basically all the plate coating chemistries that are used throughout our plants worldwide. But Polychrome holds a special place in my heart also. I came from the retail industry before that, and talk about two different worlds. This was such a warm, family-like atmosphere, and really some of the best work in the time. Ken, thank you so much for organizing this. I know it takes a lot of work, and we appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Luncheon. I started with Polychrome in 1989, stayed on until 2009 when Kodak decided and then lucky enough, Ralph Mashio, my wonderful friend, helped me get a job at Spray Lab, but that was just bought over by PPG Industries, so I'm in between jobs. I'm working with Ralph a lot now. It's just such wonderful memories. It was one, like everyone said, it was one place to work, working right there, working around the field. Had a crisis, and I had to stay there almost overnight. And Ralph Field the next day said, take us out to dinner. Things, just like that. They always appreciate it. So, thank you so much.
We used to have one. Hi everyone, I'm Elaine Brooks. Many of you don't know me by face, but my voice. I started with Polychrome in 1979 in the sales office in New York City, Spring and 6th Avenue. And then we closed that office, moved to Yonkers in a small office across the road from the main office. Then I was moved over to the main office. And then in 92, all the antics started, and we moved to Fort Lee, and in Fort Lee, and I moved to Connecticut, then I was moved back to Fort Lee, then back to Connecticut. However, it's been a wonderful ride. It was my first job after leaving England, so everything was new, and thanks to my office manager, Fanny Hampton, she was so terrific. She was a wonderful person, as you don't see. And thanks to Pauline and Marge for encouraging me to come to one of these get-togethers. I'm never one to get into these things. I was a bit of a in the corner, stay in the corner and watch what goes on. But I'm glad I came because faces, I had names, but not faces now. I'm linking up everything. I was laid off from Kodak in 2009, and in a way it was a blessing because my mother was sick and she's just getting worse and worse, and so I'm able to take care of her and my son. So, and I have no regrets. Thank
you. Hi, I'm Ray Bender. And I started with Polychrome in 1977. I actually came from the trade, and Paul Memphis was my sales rep. Well, it was Bill Miller and Harvey Hillock, maybe some names that you remember. I bought it from them. In fact, I bought ACR film. And everywhere I moved, I called who's my rep. And back in those days, I think it was Fujifilm in the box. And anyway, Paul recruited me, said you should go to work for us, and I'd never been in sales, I like production. So I went ahead and did it, and I was a sales rep in Southern California. And then I was asked to move to San Francisco as assistant manager. And I became branch manager. And then I became a district manager over Seattle. And I had a total of 23 years. And I know I interfaced with a lot of people around the table here. One thing Ron would do was, if you remember the QC, the teams that he would put together, or everybody would put together, and Ron would make sure that Salesforce was represented. I remember going to Yonkers and spots on the plates was because the roof was leaking. They just put layers and layers on top. And I remember Columbus when we opened it. And we took a bunch of branch managers and warehouse managers and went down there and worked for a week at a time, trying to get that organized. But fond memories. It was 2000. I was the last Polychrome person in Northern California. And I was called in and said, "Don't meet me." And kind of sad. Really, you know, it was a great company. Just the faces, I know a lot of the stuff we did, we were out with cowboys and Indians, we felt, you know, West Coast. But we did a lot of good things with CTX and when it came out, and the Donnelly plant up in Oregon, and World Cover, and Merced. But fond memories and great times. Thank you.
I'm the extra vendor, I'm the big guy. Thank you for allowing me to join you folks today. It's been a real pleasure. So far, and I think it's going to be a future. So that's all I have to say. I was there for Polychrome, and I think Polychrome was just a dynamite company. They were good to us, and I think we were good to them. So, thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Paul Namura. I came out of the trade in 1974. I was a Polychrome user in a large company, Economy Graphics, and we used the Polychrome positive plates. And sometimes the plates comes in as a cracker jack. You never know what you get inside. And it was hard to work with it, but I was able to make it work. And Joe Muta came and he said to me, "Hey, how would you like to go work for Polychrome? Come for an interview." So I said, well, it's a possibility. 1974, I came and did interview Charlie Priner, and the following week I started working for Polychrome. It was a totally different experience from working in the trade and then servicing customers with the product. It was an experience, and I stayed for 24 years with Polychrome. And presently I'm still working in the industry at part-time and learning a lot about new technology which is coming and improving it every day. And I believe today's printing is better than it was in the past, and the application is easier than was in the past. It's a lot of new technology out there which is benefits the printer and the supplier. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Unresolved. Enough, Cal Fox. Oh boy, where do you start? Where do you start? Polychrome. When I got out of college, I worked for Mayor Daley in Chicago for 2 years. And with aspirations of going into politics. Well, nothing in Chicago has changed. That's the beginning, right? And I'm not in politics. I had a cousin who worked for Polychrome, who said they need a rep in Chicago selling plates. Well, you know what I thought, right? Plates were, you know, wedge wood or something. China. And long story short, I went to work in Chicago, ended up taking over that operation. We built it up into a fairly large operation, and we had 2 offices. You remember Cellophilm? We had the opportunity to work with Cellophilm. Bob, remember Cellophilm? Yes. Thank you. And then my mentor, my friend, person that I miss, frankly, Jim Graves, who I really worked closely with, came to my home in Chicago and said, "Ron, I want you to come to New York." He told me, he said, "Ron," he said, "I'm going to tell you a couple things. One, when you're driving down Broadway Avenue in Yonkers, all right, don't stop." We'll stand at the top of the stairs at 8 o'clock in the morning taking attendance. And that was my opening to Mr. Halpern. Joined the operation in Chicago. One of the first products I sold was stencils. And I sold stencils to Just Graph Multigraph and A.B. Dick. Marge? Yeah. And I knew less about stencils than I did plates. But we did, and then we moved on to other products, and Victor introduced us to film. I think it was Fujifilm, wasn't it, Victor?
Yes.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to sell Fujifilm. The biggest Fujifilm sales in Chicago was to Northwestern University, by the way. And a bit of trivia, and away we went. The operation in the field was a little different than corporate. A little more difficult to handle because we had 30 branches. We had a lot of people. And really the success of the branch operation was due to the people in corporate. It was the people who supported the branches, the people who frankly supported me, really helped me. And there are some people other than Jim Graves, but there was Bob Oken, Paul Riley, Ralph Thiel, Ralph Mashio, especially on the financial end, which as we grew got more and more difficult. Got more difficult to understand how to run these businesses because all the branches obviously were cost centers. We had warehouses, and there were a lot of problems. Then Vivian joined us and professionalized the Human Resources Department, did a great job of that, which we needed to get up to speed of that area. There's just a lot of things that happened. But the family atmosphere continued, especially in the field. And as Ray can tell you, we had regional meetings, we had national meetings, which were fantastic. I mean, and we really had the Super Bowl.
What about the shows that you participated in?
Well, you know, I tell you, at one time, Victor helped me. I think we had 20 trade shows going every year, which was Joe Mutal and his wife literally handled all the shows. And just did an unbelievable, I couldn't do it. I just could not do that type of work, it was just too much. But Joe and his wife did. Mimi Levy, Sept Cross. Sept Cross, who did all the advertising on it. Sept was in charge of advertising, vice president of advertising for 100 years. Did a fantastic job. But behind it all, of course, was Mr. Halpern and his support and his money, all right? And then there were people like, I should mention another very, very good friend and someone who was very sick, by the way, Henry Levy, who's not doing well. But Henry was a great, great person and really grew up within the Polychrome family. So as we go forward, you know, a lot of people have asked me, and I'm still in contact. In fact, there's a reunion, I think in about 3 weeks in Chicago, and there's about 30 people in Chicago that I go to, and all the guys in the Midwest get together, although, unfortunately, a lot of people are passing on. And that happens at this age. I mean, there are entire branches where all the people are gone. I was just told today that our entire Syracuse branch, they're all gone, which you know, tugs at the heart. But people like Manny Roth in Chicago, who do the same thing, he puts together these reunions. And their luncheon reunions, they're just a lot of fun. But it's still that family feeling of everybody getting together.
Sumner Schuster in Boston, originally, now living in Rhode Island. Anyway, my dear friend Victor brought me on board to set up a sales operation in New England in Tacoma newspapers. And I did that for many years. And it was very, very, very exciting